Hey, a new try. Hello, good morning, Grue.
Hello, good morning, Grendel.
Good morning, people at the ZOOparty. Good morning, people at Twitch and everywhere. Hi. Okay, so we have the honor of being the first speakers this morning, because it's morning.
It's good to have mornings too.
Mornings too, yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so you do funny, weird shit with C64.
So they say, my hobby seems to be these days with the C64 game modifications or total conversions, not total conversions, but modifications. And some I have done, latest was maybe Night Mission Pinball, Impossible Mission, and some others. And those can be seen on CSDB. Someone is more interested.
So the thing is, you can't code.
No, in a modern sense, I can't code. Of course, I understand how computer code works, but I don't have an idea how to write hello world in Python, for example. And that's, people think it's strange, but I just can do 6502 assemblers. So.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that he can't code, but he works with code. Works and works. It's your absolutely, you do it for living, right?
No, I repair computers, or not just repair. I do everything, lots of stuff with computers. But I'm not a programmer, but I understand computers very well, and I can thank C64 for that. I understand how computer works in low level, so it's easier to find the causes why something is not working, because you understand how the computers really work.
How and why did you start reverse engineering games, old games, modifying them?
That's a long answer, because sound is circulating. Okay, maybe it's better now.
Oop.
Yeah, so I started it because in the early days I thought that I like this game, but there's something that bugs me. I don't like some feature or something, so speed or something about the game. And I was always thinking that it would be great if someone did this. And I was talking to people that, could someone do this to me? And it shouldn't be too hard. Can someone change this? And you all know what happens when you ask someone to do things for you. You don't see the volunteers. And time goes by, and like 20, 30 years. And somehow I remember this, and there's a new computers like this Ultimate 64. Okay, it's a C64, but I think it's a completely new computer because it has turbo option and other things. So I just started to look into the games, if I could do it myself. And I found out I could. And I didn't understand what I was going into, because it's a quite deep rabbit hole.
Yeah. So Wasteland was the first major project you did. You had some, maybe you probably had some smaller things, smaller games you was looking at first, but then Wasteland came.
Yes, the Wasteland was maybe the first I ever finished and released, or at least a bigger job. So the Wasteland game is originally developed for Apple II and C64 in parallels. And I'm a big fan of the Wasteland and big fan of the Fallout games. And it bugged me that I never really played Wasteland, the first one. And I wanted to play it on my C64, and I was I just wanted to play it, so I made the discs for the game, and I'd start to load the game. It takes forever, and I couldn't do it. It was too slow. It was it was unplayable. So I was thinking, I have this IDE 64, which is a hard drive controller for the C64. Why this game doesn't work with this? And and after some time later, it now works in the IDE 64, and I played the Wasteland. But it was quite a journey, and this Wasteland modification is more like just a loader for the game. And I even published it in the GitHub. So if you're interested how the code works, it's all open there. And somehow I got more courage to do so more of these modifications after the Wasteland.
What did you do to Wasteland?
I was just making it to work with the IDE 64, and later I made it work better with the CPU accelerators. So if you have a Ultimate 64 and IDE 64, the gameplay is much faster and it's more enjoyable like that. But if you just have a plain C64, it's also faster, but you need this IDE 64. So I just modded so it would be more comfortable to play for me.
Yeah, more comfortable. Yeah, I remember seeing you play it at the clubhouse one day, and he was playing Wasteland in a fight with fists only against some armored beast. So there was this turbo boost mode or something, and the characters were just hitting in accelerated mode.
Yes, we were in the game. There's a feature: if you kill the night creeper creatures only with your fists, you get the double experience from it. And I guess it took one whole afternoon and several guys that we have managed to kill it, but it's doable, and you get the double experience. Now we know.
Fantastic. Okay, if I jump a little bit, you have said that doing game reverse engineering, it's like running into brick wall. There is so much to learn.
It is, especially when you start. It's hopeless because you don't know anything about the game really, and it's just a process where you start investigating it bit by bit, little by little, and when you get more comfortable with how the game works, how the code is in the memory, and bit by bit you start to understand it. And I like to refer it like a Sudoku game or a jigsaw puzzle. It's just a mess at the start, but when you get the pieces right into the places, it gets easier and easier and easier, and it's also very addictive. So it's how do I say it? It takes time, and you lose time while doing it.
Very addictive.
Yes, it's really hard to stop when you get going. For example, I remember a weekend when I got home from work, and thought that I just looked a little bit about this game, and then something happened, and I noticed it's Sunday, and I have to go to work. When I think about that weekend backwards, I just remember that I was doing C64 stuff.
Well, it's a good weekend.
My wife
perfect.
Doesn't agree.
You mentioned also earlier that actually, okay, every project is different, but you can't carry anything from one project to another. Everything is coded different. You stumble into different coding techniques, different insights of the games.
Yes, of course, it's an assembly code, and it is that. But you can do the code in so many different ways that when you start to go deeper into the code, you learn how the original programmer did the things. And it's kind of surprising that every game I have been going into, it's coded in different styles. So it doesn't get necessarily easier to understand the code because it's made so much differently. But of course there are similarities, and the graphics modes and everything works, of course, the same way for everyone. But how it's used can vary a lot. Some people have done it very difficultly, and some people, it's like an art when you start to understand how the code works.
So you enhance the games for yourself, but how do you pick up the games?
I, of course, pick the games I somehow like myself. Like the Wasteland, I wanted to play it and it was unplayable, so I took it. And like this Night Mission Pinball I recently was enhancing, I always loved it. It's the best pinball game for the C64, and the original reason why I went into it, because the ball flickers sometimes. I fucking hate when something is flickering. So I started to look into the game. I noticed, yes, this is not synced to the screen drawing. Okay, now it is. Then I was starting to notice, okay, this is quite slow. I could make this faster. And then I was asking half jokingly if someone wants to make new graphics for the game, and Deuce of Extent raised his hand, and I guess the rest is history. The game looks awesome now, and I think it's more playable than the original. But of course, if someone wants to play the original, that's okay, because it's not the same anymore. So I don't mind.
Yeah, the games can change a lot in your hands, and some people don't like it.
Yes, unfortunately. But of course, I don't destroy the original games in my project. But you have to be very careful when you touch a classic, like this Impossible Mission game. It's a total classic. I love the game. But I wanted to make it even better, because I have bought it on PlayStation and some other platforms also. And I noticed it's been ported to many computers. And I was looking at the YouTube, the different playthroughs of the game, and noticed that there are some features for some of the ports that wasn't on C64. And I was thinking maybe I could import these changes to the C64 version. Like there's a map on Impossible Mission. You clear the rooms. And now in this modified version I made, the maps, the rooms that are empty are marked on the map, so it's easier to remember where you have been and where you have got, where could be even more pieces to be found. And I saw this in PlayStation version, and I thought that's a quite idea, and I implemented it in C64, and it was a pain because I think the Impossible Mission game, if you extract all the data, it uses more than 120 kilos of memory or something. And there wasn't much room to make any modifications, so in the end I had to reverse engineer the whole game, whole code base, and how the graphics works, and try to find if there would be some place to add my own code. And there wasn't really. It's purely utilized. And in the end, what I did, thanks for the TNT of Beyond Force, he suggested me that I should pack the graphics. So when you finish the game, you get an animated screen of the Dr. Alvin Mindbender. And that's in memory, not packed form. So maybe it was later added there. So I just packed the data, and there I had some more room for my own modifications. So it's a quite long process. So before you can change anything, you have to understand how it works. And if you think about that, it's a quite long process. Because there's no source code, there's no comments, there's just pure assembly. You can't change anything there. You have to make it into source code, and then you can make and recompile the whole game. Then you can make your modifications. And this making the source code or resourcing, whatever the term is, it could take like a month, 2 weeks, 2 months. A pain in the ass job. And there's no shortcuts for it. You just have to go through the code and make it by hand. There's no automatization on that.
Mm. And also this, you are comparing different platforms, different ports, seeing this, that what's done in this version, how is it done in this version. There is so much other work. Well, you have to play. You have to see all those different versions to see what you can bring to the Grue version.
Yes, that's true. So I call it doing the homework. There's a site called Moby Games. I guess many people know it, but there's a lot of information collected about the commercial games, that who published it, what version it has, the years it has been published. And I use that site a lot to see what version was the first and so on, to try to come up with the modifications. And not all the changes are good, and so I don't usually like them, so I don't bring them in.
Mm. And, for example, with the different versions, you said that all the ports of Impossible Mission for the other platforms, they are shit.
No, not that necessarily they are shit. I didn't mean that, because the computers are very different. C64 is a very powerful computer in capable hands. And when you port a game from C64 to some lesser platform, you cannot just achieve the same, you can't just do the same game, because there's always limitations on all the platforms. So,
you mentioned that it takes time. It can understanding the code base. It can take 2 months. Even. Yeah. So these are long projects, and you get help from other people also. You mentioned TNT, probably others as well. So it takes time and motivation to finish the project.
Yes, that's the most difficult part, is to actually release something, because it's not easy. Of course, you can make a version that works and it works for you. You know that there's a bug there, but if you know them, you don't have to care about them, the game works and you can play it and enjoy it. But if you release it to the public, the first reaction you get from the people, why this is bugging, why this doesn't work. So you have to repair those annoying bugs that you can release it. And then the most annoying thing is that when you have truly tested yourself and give it to someone to test it, then you get back a 10-point list of the new bugs you didn't notice yourself. And that's a quite time-consuming and an annoying job to do, really. And if you involve in the project some other people, like those make me graphics, so if I don't release the games, the other people's job has been the waste. So if you want to bring some other people to your projects, please make sure you can finish them.
Yeah, it's more responsibility on you.
Yes, and it's a full process to make an actual release. You want to make some kind of readme what you have changed. And I am making a habit that I keep a kind of diary, that every time I change something, I try to write it down, and that's why my readme files are very long and very, very technical. But they are also my notes. So if the project sits like a week or 2 weeks, it's very difficult to remember what you did last time when you were doing something. So you have to have some kind of log that what you have done and what are the problems.
So about your process and tools, how do you work? What do you work with?
There's, of course, a lot of tools, emulators, but I guess the most important tool for the game modifications for me is the retro debugger, which is a program you can see the inner workings of the C64 on your screen, what happens in the memory, what goes in the code. And when you load something from disk or tape, you can see the stuff loading into memory. You can observe it doing things and make notes that these memory areas are reserved. You can't do anything from there. And something called zero page, the first page in memory, is very important. So if you pay attention to the zero page, you can learn a lot of the game's inner workings, because it's usually used for copying memory, the addresses and other stuff. So I usually play some game and just look at the zero page a long time. I try to learn as much as I could even before I look into the code. Also, what big banks are used, what kind of graphics it uses. Does it use sprites? Does it use characters? And try to collect some base information a lot. Doing the homework.
Yeah. And looking at the assets, what kind of assets do you find there, and how to use them again or pack them? And
yes, of course, in some point you have to extract the assets from the game, like sprites, bitmaps, and try to figure out what you do with them, and later on import them back into the game when you get the source code. And of course, what kind of programs you use. There's naturally a lot of good tools for the C64, and I always want to say to the people, the best tool you have is one you can use. So if I use some other tool, it doesn't mean that you should use that too. So most important things is that you know the tools that you use and understand what you are doing, of course, because I don't always do, and it causes pain.
Okay, going back to the games, we did have a look at Portal earlier this morning. So Portal is an Activision game from 1986, not related to the Valve's Portal, but this is a menu-driven adventure strategy game.
It's a kind of book, electronic book, a story. there's not much of the game. The game consists that you click some icons and then you get text, and you read the text and then click some. It's not really a game, but it's a great one, and I always wanted it to use the hard drive because the game uses something like 5 disk sites or something for the story, and it's not very convenient to play from the floppies. And I think there wasn't even a working crack of the game. At least all the cracks I found were faulty. They didn't work. When they asked to change the disk, nothing happened, and so on. And with some help, I managed to find files of the untouched, non-playable Portal game, and I started to old school way crack it, the code base. So it starts with the loader. Loader checks the copy protection. You have to skip that, and then it loads the game into the memory, and you try to understand how it works. How could I move this to the hard drive? And then I stumbled into this that the Portal floppies are encrypted. If you look at them with the hex editor, they are just complete garbage. And I find out that they are actually encrypted, and in a pain in the ass way that every sector of the disk is encrypted with a different key, and you have to calculate the key to decrypt the data out. And the disk drive was making the decryption, so the decryption code wasn't in the C64 memory, so I had to reverse engineer the disk drive code first, so I could decrypt the data, so I could convert it to a big data file which can be loaded from the hard drive. And it was very difficult, but I loved it. It was a nice challenge, and that's where we come to the point that I can't code, because when I wanted to decrypt the code, I found out the algorithm that how it was encrypted, and it was kind of simple. I did code a Python code that could decrypt it. In the end, I had to write it in form of C64, so I write the code which you input the disk side into the code, and then it outputs the unencrypted disk side. And it took some time, but okay, hard drive is fast, and Ultimate 64 has a turbo, so it took some minutes to decrypt one disk side, and I could continue the game. Of course, when I have the book data on the disk, and I have the friend testing it, we noticed that there are even some bugs into the book code, so there were some characters from the original text processing program, which I fixed too, because I noticed them. But no, I don't know if you understood anything what I was talking, but it was a nice challenge.
But what was your motivation for doing this? Did you have a connection to the game previously, or you just found something that doesn't work and you wanted to make it work?
No, the connection was that I absolutely love interactive fiction games, you know, those jokes.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued with the idea that you could read a book with your computer when I was a child. But since I didn't have a working copy of the game back then, and then my friends suggested that this game really should work on the hard drive, so why not? It was an interesting challenge.
Okay, one other project you did was Autodual, so an Origin role-playing game by Origin Systems based on the Car Wars role-playing game, kind of based, inspired
yes.
by.
So that was Autodual was quite interesting. It's an Apple II original, which was ported to C64, quite straightforward. It doesn't use sprites because there are no sprites on Apple II and so on. And what I did for the game was fix the loader so it could be loaded from the hard drive, but it was so slow. It was painfully slow. It was actually almost unplayable from C64. And then I was looking YouTube videos of the Apple II version, and it was much more smoother. And I started to think about that maybe I could little bit optimize this code, and in the end I could. So it plays now like Apple II version on C64 after my modifications. And also, you can't play Autodual without a map, and you get the map with the original game. So what we did, Troll of Extent, did pixel the map on C64, and now the game has in-game map. You can press F1 and it shows you the map, and even it shows you where you are on the map. And the original game doesn't have that. So it's made much better than the original in that way.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, and Rock and Bolt?
Rock and Bolt is an excellent, would you call it tactic game or?
Puzzle game.
Puzzle game, yes, puzzle game is a good. So it's a game where you build a skyscraper, you get a blueprint of the floor and you have to bolt the moving platforms to the place. And the problem with the game was that it had a lot of levels, but they are difficult and you get really tired of playing complicated level and you couldn't save. And of course I wanted to save the game and continue later. That was my goal for the Rock and Bolt. And there was another thing. When you finish the level, the hero rises on the platform up from the screen to move to the next screen. There was borders. I wanted the guy to rise up off the screen to the upper border, and that was another goal. And oh boy, that was a hell of a nightmare to do. But I finally managed to do it. Also, in the Rock and Bolt, if you have a Commodore 128, it's a bit faster than C64 version because you can run C64 mode on Commodore 128 on 2 megahertz part of the screen. So when your raster line is on the border area, you can switch 2 megahertz on, and when the screen starts, you just switch the turbo mode off and everything works. So it's a little bit smoother experience. And that is another problem. There's no decent emulator for the 128, so you can't really develop with it emulators. So Troll was testing it for me and I couldn't test it myself, and I guess, when you are doing something, you can't try it yourself, does this work? So you have to make a build, send it to friend tests it, then he tells me it doesn't work, then I try to figure out why it doesn't work. So you can understand it's quite a slow and very painful process, and of course other people have to be involved too, quite deeply into it. Okay, but then we got it working, and Troll suggested me that the hero sprite is quite ugly. Why don't we make it more nice? And then for the other version of the game, there was much more colorful graphics. Of course, it was better platform, so it could do it. But in the end, there was room for 2 more sprites in the game, so we made a high-res layer to the hero and ported the graphics, and it looks pretty nice now, at least if you have a good monitor. So it was also more difficult than you can imagine to just add 2 more sprites onto the game and more animation frames, because you have to change the game code so that the animation doesn't break when you jump and bolt the bolts and everything. It was more difficult than I anticipated. But I made the source code for the game and I could make those adjustments and some anti-cheat measures also there. Just for fun.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about the Commodore 128, and that's once from that we can jump to the topic of developing for new hardware or different hardware. For example, these games made for Commodore 64, and you can use the higher megahertz of the 128, for example.
There's all Ultimate 64 or Chameleon or whatever. Yeah. Super CPU, which no one seems to own.
But that's you can actually make the games for the new modern hardware. And how do you use those?
Yes, I have to explain something, that because in PC world, when you have more powerful computer, the game just automatically runs smoother. But if you have like the game for the 1 megahertz C64 and you run it with 20 megahertz, it's often unplayable because it's not designed to pass the processor. The game needs to be synced to the video screen, and if it doesn't sync, it just goes too fast and you can't play it. So it's another weave into the problem to make the games work with the faster CPU. And I like that kind of thing, to make them work properly.
Yeah. So this is there's so many rabbit holes here for you personally, learning new things and finding how the games work. Also rabbit hole of hardware, rabbit hole,
Yes.
what new hardware, what different hardware do you support. Also requests from people, what to add to the game. You have announced a project, you have maybe released some preview version, and people are asking, do this.
Yes, that's a kind of thing that, of course, you get a request to do some game, but I just can't work like that. I don't get paid to do this, and it takes so much time. So if I don't have any personal connection to the thing, I can't do it because this is a passion job.
Yeah.
You have to love what you do, and the thing you don't love, it's very difficult to get onto it.
And also request, do you have a request list or your personal list of games you would like to process next?
I kind of have a work directory where I guess there's something like 10 to 20 games already waiting. I have looked into it in some matter and thinking about should I continue on with this or should not. And the thing that there's not so many unfinished projects or maybe should I say unstarted projects tells a story about it's not so easy to get into enhancing something. You have to know what you are enhancing because you can make a good game even crappier or crap game even worse if you don't really know what you are doing. You have to be very careful and think about it a lot before starting. So I have games like somebody might have heard like Racing Destruction Set, 2-player driving game. It's a very nice game. I have been thinking about it. I haven't done anything about it, not much at least. And some other titles too, which I can't remember really. And don't want to reveal maybe.
Okay. Anything else? Questions from the local audience or from the remote audience? We can take questions at this point.
Okay, so if audience has questions, I have a mic here, so ping me.
No questions? Could this be?
See if there is anything online. Hey,
there is
online people, come on. You can ask.
Okay, what's the next one?
I have one project which is in a good state, and it's an old game from Arcus Press Software called Alien. I don't know if you know the game, but it's a simulation of the first Alien movie trying to deal with the case of running loose alien. And it's an old game, it looks ugly, and it's very hard to get into it to understand what the game does because it doesn't give you much information. And I always loved the game, and now lately I have been learning how to play it, and I want to make it more enjoyable for the player, so more feedback and more understanding what is happening in the game. And most likely it's going to be something that I enjoy myself and other people don't understand what's the deal.
Any other questions?
Mikron is spamming into chat.
I can't see that far.
Yeah, that you have showed your project folder.
Yes.
Yeah.
On a party some weeks ago. There are lots of folders in my project folder inside. But it's not so easy to pick up on a project. I just want to do that because it involves so much work. It's hard to pick one. Because you want to be able to finish it.
Yeah. Okay, feedback. What kind of feedback are you getting? Does it make you happy?
No, it mostly amuses me because when I made this impossible mission, there was feature from BBC version that when the hero fell from high enough, the screen shakes and made a little sound. And I thought that was a funny thing. I want to add it onto C64. And when I was editing it, the comments I got, this is totally useless feature, why it's in there? Also, I wanted to, in the game you collect puzzle pieces, and when you assemble the pieces, you get a letter for the password. The password is 9 letters long, and you get a different letters, and the password is bit by bit revealed during the game. And I got feedback that I ruined the game because now the new passwords are not anymore butterfly names, like in the original game. So it's a kind of hard thing to change a classic, because whatever you do, you're going to upset someone. But also in the Impossible Mission, they are, I guess many people remember the game, they are those robots which turn and scan you. And the one of the addition I wanted to make, that we see the backside of those droids, so it can now turn first, front and backwards, so you can see nice hot robot asses there. And okay, that felt like an easy thing to add there. There was memory for some more sprites and such, but oh my god, I was wrong. It was very difficult to add there. And little things also, I wanted to change the puzzle pieces, because on the original game, the basic shapes are always the same, and some people have learned how the puzzles work, so I changed them a little bit, and that also caused some misgrievance, that the game is now too difficult, but the name says it's impossible, so what? And it can be finished when you learn the new shapes. I just wanted to make it more challenge, because it's a new version, why not? And I probably have forgotten a lot. One thing I want to say about, I forgot earlier, that when games are ported from another platform, so like I made this train simulator, steam engine simulator, I don't even remember the name now. It doesn't matter. The game was originally on Spectrum, and then it was ported to BBC Micro, and then from BBC Micro to C64. And C64 have 64 Ks of memory, but BBC Micro have something like 28 kilos. So the game was heavily made to work with lesser memory than C64 has. And it was unbelievably slow, because lots of the data was packed and unpacked in real time. So in the end, I ended up writing half of the game. New code there, and now it goes more than 2 times, maybe 3 times faster than the original game. But it doesn't change the gameplay, but it's much more nicer to play, because the graphics grows faster. In the original game, 1 frame took 1 second, because 1 game tick was 1 second, so the graphics updated 1 time per second. Logical. But the code was so slow that it missed the 1 second. So it was a nice challenge, and TNT of Beyond Force did a lot there. He made the mathematics working faster, the vector graphics and such. I don't understand anything about vector graphics, really. So it was a nice project, but again, it's a game that I'm quite sure that no one else plays than me.
I will have to try it someday. I still haven't, but it's my type of game.
But it's an interesting game, because there are only some controls you can say. There's not a lot, but it's very complicated. Of course, when it's a steam engine, there's a boiler. You heat the boiler, it produces steam, and you get the power to drive the rail. And there's water. When the water runs out, you have to add more water to the kettle. It cools down, so you need to heat it more, and you get the controls are easy, but it's very difficult game to master. That you can really drive the train.
Yeah.
Everything has to be balanced. And the game engine is a nice simulator. If you don't have enough pressure, the whistle doesn't work. Oh. it checks stuff like this, so it's a really nice simulation.
So while you are doing this for fun, you are not doing much of, let's say, publicity for the projects or yourself. They just get the automatic, people share it if it's a good game, if they are interested in it, but you still get some publicity, especially with Mission Impossible, you got to the retro game news or something. Yeah.
So sometimes I usually just put it on the CSDP website and see what happens. And then I see how the people play it on YouTube, and I'm like, oh no, they don't even know how to play this, but maybe I should do own videos to show people what this new version can do. I don't know, maybe someday. I don't do this for publicity, I do it for myself, so it's a secondary target. But of course, it's very nice to get the feedback, even it's good or bad.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess we are finished. If there's no more questions.
Last questions. Come on. No questions. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching on the online. Thank you, Grue.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Me too.